So if you've been in this business for a while and you're in the United States, I bet you've had a chance to use the SLC-500 PLC product line from Rockwell Automation. And I got to say, as somebody who got in 1990, right when this was coming out, it was a huge new product for Rockwell Automation. I mean, it was much less expensive than the PLC 5s. It had a lot of new features the 5 didn't have. I mean, the 5 still has things it can do that the SLC-500 can't. But overall, it was an exciting, new, small, affordable product for the time. And it was just great to work with, and I've really enjoyed it. Got a lot of memories using it and helping people get it up and running. And it's deployed in just thousands and thousands and thousands of facilities around the world. But in any case, they don't make the PLCs anymore, right? So the CPUs, you can't get them anymore. I mean, you could do an exchange or a repair, but you're not going to be buying them brand new from Rockwell anymore. And so I'm sure some of you out there are thinking, hey, maybe it's time to replace it. Maybe the CPU died and you don't want to spend thousands of dollars to get it repaired. And you're like, well, can I just reuse all this I/O in another system? And over at the Automation blog, I have covered ad nauseum in so many articles and videos how to go about taking those old RS Logix files and import them into either RS Logix 5000 or Studio 5000. And I'll just show some of them up on the screen now. But you can go over to the Automation blog and read about how to do that. But today, I want to cover a new option. And actually, the folks over at SoftPLC, you may remember them from podcast 173. So they've been around forever. That logo of theirs, I remember seeing it from over 30 years ago when I first got into this business. And they have a new migrator tool, import tool, built right into their software. So if you wanted to migrate from the SLC-500 to their system and not make the jump to 32 bits and Studio 5000 and all the complications that brings, then you'll probably be very interested in this episode of the Automation Show. And thanks to SoftPLC, this show is going to be completely ad-free, no ads at all. And please check out the SoftPLC links below in the description if you're interested in this solution. So what would you do with SoftPLC? Well, you would take out your CPU, you would throw in an ASB, and then what would you do? You would run it over to one of their controllers, and with their software, they would just input your program, and it's not 100%, but it's pretty close, right? And I think, you guys be the judge, I think it's closer than the conversion to ControlLogix or CompactLogix, okay? So we're going to do both today in today's show. We're going to import a SLC-500 project into both the SoftPLC development environment, which has this new SLC-500 importer, and we're also going to import it into Studio 5000 for ControlLogix and CompactLogix, and then we're going to compare the results, and we're going to try to get an idea of how much additional work is needed to be done. And I think for those of you who are not ready for a major rewrite, I think you're going to find that one of these options is a little bit easier, okay, a lot easier to do than the other, but they both have pros and cons. So that's what we're going to cover today on the Automation Show. And with that, let's go over to the computer and get started. Okay, to get started, I'm here in my virtual machine, and I'm going to install the software I received from the good folks over at SoftPLC. This is TopDoc Next Gen. As I did the installation, I came to this screen here and I said, yeah, why not create a desktop icon? And also, I figured it doesn't hurt to add it to the system path for all users. So I selected that as well. And then here on the next screen, I left the install directory as the default because I read in the installation instructions that if you change the install directory, you may have to change some other setting. So I said, let me just leave it at the default. And from here, I just installed it, and it went really quick. I haven't sped up the screen here at all. You can see how fast it's installing here, and then it was done. And so you can see next it says Run TopDoc Next Gen, and it did not run, but I'm going to go ahead and move the icons over here. And let me delete the install file, and now I'm going to try to run it, and I do get this cryptic error. And in the installation instructions, it says, hey, before you run it the first time, you have to install the Keylock USB driver. So I'll go ahead and do that. And it just reminds me here not to have the USB installed when I do this. I don't have a USB, so I don't have it installed. And you can see there, and installed without problems. And now, back to launching TopDoc. And here you can see it says there's no software key. So we'll be operating in demo mode, and I'm okay with that. Let's go ahead and click on OK. And here I'm just going to use the default name and password and click on OK. I have no news here. Don't think I'm connected to the internet, so I'm going to just move TopDoc over and close this news and updates window. And here we are in TopDoc. Now, before we do anything else, I'm going to go ahead and minimize TopDoc. And I am going to go get the sample file that SoftPLC sent me. This is a SLC-500 file, obviously. And so let me grab it and bring it over here. And we'll open it up in RSLogix 500. Now, if you're wondering, I'm running RSLogix 500 version 12, I believe. I checked it earlier. So with that, we'll wait for it to open up. And here you can see the customer file. Now, this file, I was told, has been scrubbed of any information from that customer, any uniquely identifying information. So it's just a ladder program with, we don't have any idea what it does, except, we can see here some standard instructions, moves, XICs, OTEs, one-shots, equals, counter up, and so on. Nothing really outlandish here. I mean, we will find later down in the bottom of the program, we're going to see here some, timers, comparison instructions, and so on. But there is a block transfer read, and that's because this particular SLC-500 had a scanner module in slot 1. Okay, so this is a remote I/O scanner that can read up to 4 racks of remote I/O. And initially there wasn't even a block transfer read or write for the SLC-500. I would not recommend trying to implement the old way we used to do it before they added these instructions in, because that was painful. But in any case, once they added the BTR and BTW into RSLogix 500, it actually became pretty doable to use a remote I/O with the SLC-500, and almost as easy as the PLC-5. And I know some of you are surprised to hear me say that, but that is the truth. In any case, here we can see we got 32 words in and out, and that's what you would have over 4 racks on remote I/O, and logical racks, that is. And here you can see we got an M0 and M1 length of 3300. And I used to always tell people, hey, think of the M files as memory chips on the module itself, on the scanner module. So in any case, if we edit the G file, we will actually see what I/O we're expecting to see out there. And you can see here, it's just half a rack of rack 2. It's just group 0 through group 3. So you can see words 16 through 19. And I have no idea what's out there. It could be a VFD, could be an HMI, who knows. But in any case, that gives you an idea what's in the remote I/O in this SLC-500. Now, I should point out here that if you're going to SoftPLC, they still support remote I/O. But if you're going to migrate to ControlLogix, I don't believe any of the remote I/O modules are still available. I know the DHRIO, which I've used quite a bit for both DH Plus and remote I/O, was obsoleted just recently, and I believe the new one was originally the 1757 ABRIO and then rebranded the 1756 RIO. I believe that's the case. When I look up the 1756 RIO, I find that it's end of life and will no longer be purchasable after 2025. So I've never used it. It sounded like a good idea when they came out with it. Again, I prefer what I've used, the DHRIO. But if you're going to ControlLogix, RIO is not going to be an option, right? So yeah, maybe you could still get one of these end-of-life products until, for a few more months, but what's the point, right? So you're going to be using, if you go to ControlLogix, the newer 1747 AENT. But if you're going with SoftPLC, you're going to be just throwing in a 1747 ASB in the SLC-500 rack. And the reason I mentioned that is because we're talking about the scanner. So what is this? I don't know, but I know with SoftPLC, since I can keep remote I/O, I can just add this rack 2 half rack to my remote I/O along with this chassis of SLC-500 hardware. However, if I go with ControlLogix, which some of you may prefer, you're going to have to not only solve the issue of getting to this rack of SLC-500 I/O, but also getting to this, whatever this product is. And there's no guarantee that this product that's sitting on rack 2, right? Since we don't know what it is, there's no guarantee it has an Ethernet option. And so what does that mean? That means you're going to have to do some more investigations. We did show on the show there's products out there where you can go RIO to Ethernet. So they're kind of expensive though. So you got to keep that in mind. But in any case, just wanted to make sure we covered that because, again, those are your choices between one and the other. Now, some of the other instructions you may notice in here, we got a lot of moves, we got a lot of math, but you also see we have a compute instruction and then a double divide instruction. We also have a PID instruction. The last one I want to show you is the SCP. In this instruction, I remember when it was added to the SLC-500, everybody loved it. And it's kind of a shame Rockwell never added it to Logix. I mean, you can get an add-on instruction very easily and put it in there. I actually show how to do that in my courses. But the fact that when you translate this to Logix, you're actually going to get this big, long mathematical formula, which works. But it's not easy on the eyes or easy to understand for somebody who's maybe not an expert in using Logix. So when you see we convert this to SoftPLC, you're going to see that this is imported as an SCP. So you don't have to retrain anybody on what they're looking at, or go search down and download an add-on instruction. So just full disclosure here, I wanted to point that out. Okay, so let's go ahead and convert this to both SoftPLC and look at their new tool, as well as convert it to Logix, and we'll compare how the two come out. Now, to do this for SoftPLC, it's very similar to the old translate utility we used to have with older versions of Logix, where you had to do a save as SLC library file. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'll go to Save As. I'm going to choose here in the destination. I'm going to leave it as a desktop. I'm going to create a new folder called SLC. And then I'm going to go ahead and change the Save As type to SLC. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and select that folder. I'm going to leave all the defaults and I'm going to click on Save. I'm going to leave all these defaults here and click on OK. And with that done, I'm now going to save it again to import it into Studio 5000. And the way we do this, it's changed, and I've documented this all at theautomationblog.com in screen by screen, step by step. But the way we do this now in newer versions of our Logix 500 is to save it as an ACD file. So I'll go ahead and create a new folder called ACD, and then select that. And then from the drop-down Save As type, I will choose Logix Designer ACD, and I'll click on Save. Okay, now here it's going to walk me through that wizard that used to be that separate utility. And I'm going to go ahead and choose for something this small. You probably want a compact Logix. And I'm going to choose, look, let's just go with an L306ER. That's a real small guy. And we'll make it version 30 because that's as far back as we can go here. And now I'll click on Next. And I want to keep the existing I/O. That's the whole part of the process is we want to keep all the I/O and not disturb the wiring, right? That's a major part of the expense of upgrading one of these systems. Now this does take a few seconds. It almost felt like it stalled here, but it really didn't. It does pick back up again. So let me go ahead and fast forward this a little bit here so we can get to the end of the export. And now I can either launch 5000 or I'm just going to choose to exit. Okay, and let me go ahead and minimize our Logix 500. Let me go ahead and grab these two folders I just created and move them to the middle of the screen here. I'll go ahead and open up this SLC folder, and you can see the files that were created, including the SLC file. And if I open the ACD folder, you can see I have an ACD there. So we are ready to go to test inputting this into TopDoc NextGen as well as Studio 5000. So let me go ahead and bring TopDoc back up, and I'm going to go to Tools. And here you can see we got the SLC input. Now this used to be a separate service that SoftPLC offered. They're based on the PLC-5 and the PLC-5 instruction set. But with the SLC-500 now end of life, they've included this utility right in their software. And so we're going to go ahead and use this. I think we're the first ones to use this out there in the public. And I really want to thank SoftPLC for making this episode completely ad-free. I got some links to everything I'm doing here in the description. They have a great manual on this. They have all kinds of information if you need to know more. Plus, you can just contact them directly if you like what you see. So let's go ahead and get started here. You can see it wants the SLC file, so let's go ahead and grab that. If you remember, I put it in a folder on my desktop called SLC. Okay, and there's the SLC file. We'll select that. And now let's go get the symbol 6 file. So we'll grab that. And now we got to give it an output directory. Where do I want to put this? I'm going to go ahead and browse. And I'm going to create a new folder here in my Documents, and I'm going to call it SoftPLC. Okay, and I'll just double click on that and put it right there. And let's go ahead and convert it. And it's done already. That was fast. Well, it's only 136 rungs, so it shouldn't take it too long, but man, that was really fast. So in any case, let's go ahead and take a look at the HTML report. And here you can see this is showing me all of the modules. And if you wanted to replace the hardware, they give you the model numbers for the SoftPLC I/O modules. Now, this is not your only option. You can actually go to Ethernet I/O if you wanted to. They have several different versions they support. But if you just wanted to go to their native I/O, they put it here. This is not required, by the way. In our case, we're going to reuse the I/O. But if you did want to convert over to theirs, you can see it here. And you can see where everything mapped. Now, the SN, we're not even going to replace that, as the device hanging off that will stay on remote I/O because, like I said, that device may not even have any other network options. We don't even know what it is. We're just going to end up putting in slot 0 a 1747 ASB in place of the PLC that's there right now. And so then we go down to slot 2. You see the IA16. That's an AC input, 16 points. You can see that was mapped to I0. So we're mapping the old SLC-500 addresses like I:1.0. We're mapping that to I0, which is the PLC nomenclature, right? So as we go down here, we can see the inputs I0, I1, I2, and the outputs. Output 0, output 1, output 2. And then, of course, the analog is going to go to integer files. And so we have all that there. So let's continue on down the report. There are going to be some things that don't convert no matter where you go to. The question is, how much time is it going to take you to address those conversions? And so you'll be the judge of that because we're going to show you the results of both of these. And so feel free to pause the screen if you want to see any more of these topics in detail, if you want to read through this report. I'm just going to go right on to the next report, which is the XML report. And I found this really interesting because as you look at the XML report, you can actually see the code. You can actually read it. As a matter of fact, SoftPLC says, hey, if you want to edit it, go for it, edit it, because this is very easy to understand, especially when it comes to the ladder logic or the rungs, right? So we can see here, move, N13, N7. You can see here, XIC, B39, XIC, B314, and so on. So, and now some of you may say, Sean, what's the BST? So if you don't know, that's how you do branching in text. And let me just pull up SLC-500. I'll show you. Just double click on the left-hand side of a rung. And this is hard to see. Let me go ahead and zoom in here. And when you double click on the side of the rung here, you'll see the text version. You can see BST branch start, NXB, next branch, and then BND branch end. And so if you wanted to type your rungs out, you could in SLC-500 and Studio 5000. And that's something I like to do when I'm kind of doing repetitive stuff. It's just easier to type than have to grab the mouse and move it around. But in any case, the reason I showed you that is if you had to make some edits in this XML file, which is just a text file, then you could. And I use a package called Notepad++. Here you can see it's being displayed in my browser. But in any case, it's very easy to do search, replace, and so on. Now, one of the things I'll show you later is that we're doing consecutive bit mapping. So we're doing, for instance, you'll see B3 addresses like B339, B336. We'll show you that back in the software in a moment. But in any case, I did want to show you the XML file because I just thought it was cool that it was in plain text. It's something we could easily edit. So with that, let's go ahead and close the pop-up here. And we're going to go ahead and do the next part, which is import that XML file into SoftPLC. So I'm going to give my app a name TAShowXP. You can see it right there now. And now I'm going to do the import. Now I got to go find the export. I put it in the SoftPLC folder. I want the XML, so let me import that. This says import completed. So we're done. Excellent. Easy. So let's go ahead and close this guy. And now let's go ahead and open that app we just created here. And that is TAShowXP. You can see it automatically get documented with a comment converted by the SoftPLC Slick Converter, which is now free and included in TopDoc. And here you can say, hey, we're in demo mode. You don't have a license key, so you can edit freely, but you can't save. So, well, that's good. I don't need to save anything. We're just going through here to compare them. Now, I'm going to go ahead and shrink this down. I want to get both TopDoc and SLC-500 open at the same time here. So let me see if I can use that Windows 10 feature where you drag the window over to the side and it lets you choose which, there we go. We split it right in half. Okay, so in any case, let me go ahead and arrange this guy. There we go. And I probably need to zoom out to get them to match side by side here. And let's go back up to the first rung. And so you can see the conversion. And this is where you're seeing like one is B363, the other one's B3315. So you can use both ways in the SLC-500 package. So let's go ahead and change that so that matches. I'll go to View, I'll go to Properties, and then I need to go to Address Display. And then for bits, I want to do the bit only, not the word bit, just to make them match. Okay, and you probably can do that in SoftPLC. I wouldn't know how to do that though. But in any case, so now you can see they match B363. We got all the moves here. And if we go down a little bit more, you can see these rungs look identical. So in any case, let's go ahead and take a look at some more of this code and see how the conversion went. And as we come down here, we can see it looks apples to apples, right? For right now, let's go look at something that doesn't look apples to apples. Okay, here I found an instruction called TLIO. The multiplication in the SLC-500 is different than what they do in the PLC-5 and SoftPLC. So this instruction needs some tweaking, and that's why it comes in as a TLIO, just to indicate that this is not your standard multiplication instruction. And you'll see right there underneath the mouse that the TLI is not loaded. So we need to load that into our system if we want these SLC-500 instructions to work in SoftPLC. And you can see also here with the double divide, right? They also need that instruction loaded into this PLC. We need to have those SLC-500 instructions loaded into this project so that they will work like they worked in the SLC-500. So let me show you how I'm going to do that. I'm going to go back to TopDoc. I'm going to click on PLC. I'm going to call it TA Show XP, same as my application. And let me just go ahead and click on OK. And here you see it here. Now you have to add in the SoftPLC SLC-500 module. So let me go ahead and click on that. And now from the list here, I'm looking for SLC. So this module has several unique SLC-500, there it is right there, has several unique SLC-500 instructions that I can just load right into my application. So I don't have to create any add-on instructions or do any compute instructions just to duplicate what the SLC-500 did. So let me go ahead and save that. And we'll go ahead and close the PLC now. And now, back in TopDoc, let me minimize that, we can go ahead and load in that PLC. So let me go to TLI, load, and you can see the PLC I have right there. And now that I've loaded it, I just have to refresh the screen. So let me go back to the top of the program, and I'm going to search for the TLIO. And here you can see, look at the first one, the multiply, it no longer says, hey, that instruction is not loaded. It has been loaded, and it is present, and everything's going to work. The SLC multiply will work as expected. And if we come down here, we can also see the double divide has been loaded. So now we have our SLC-500 instructions loaded into our project. That's it. We don't have to do anything else to get that native support. Now, let's go ahead and search for all of the TLIOs. Let's go to the end here. Okay, here we have the scale with parameters. And now one of the nice things here is you can see that it looks identical here in SoftPLC as it did in RSLogix 500. When we look at it in ControlLogix, you guys know you're going to get this compute instruction. It's kind of ugly. I wish they would just input that. One of the things I don't understand is why don't they just add the SCP instruction to ladder logic? I mean, we've been asking for it for well over a decade now, and they've come up with all these other new instructions. They're even renaming instructions. So I just don't understand, but I'm sure somebody that could probably give us a good reason why they can rename the move to the movie and other instructions to match up with the IEC 61131 standard, but they can't add the SCP. Why, guys? You even have it inside of function blocks, and this would be a great place to have it inside of Studio 5000, but I digress. Let's get back to the conversion here. And you know what? Let's go ahead and make TopDoc full screen here. And now let's look at some of the other inputs here. We got the double divide. That's taken care of for us. What else do we have here? Okay, let's stop here for a second and take a look at the block transfer read. Now look, the way the SLC-500 does it is kind of convoluted. They hid that when they actually added the BTR and BTW in the SLC-500, but again, going through that scanner module, going through the M files, it is very convoluted. You don't even want to know how it used to do it, but they masked all that by coming up with these block transfer-like instructions. However, what that instruction does is not the same as a PLC-5. It's not a true block transfer behind the scenes, so this instruction did not convert. But here's the good news. In SoftPLC, we have true block transfer instructions, just like the PLC-5. And so all I have to simply do here is add in a block transfer read. So let me go ahead and zoom in here some. And then let's, from the right-hand side, go ahead and select message and BTR. And you can see here the parameters are in the same order. So rack 2, group 0, slot 0. And then the parameters, that N781, well, that's not what I want. If we go back to the SLC-500, we'll see what that parameter is for. And that you can see actually in the RS Logix 500, there are a couple of different parameters that you don't use. Now, when it comes to the parameters, that's actually the control word here. So I'm just going to do a new BT. I know file 22 hasn't been used yet. So I'm going to do BT22:0 for the control word. You can see here, if we go back to the SLC-500 and we pull up that block transfer, you can see there the control block was N781 and the data file was N782. And you had this buffer file, which we're not going to use. So let's go ahead and put the data block in. So you can see here N7:82. I'm putting a pound in there because it's the file. It's going to be multiple words, not just one word. And then the length for the block is 4. Okay. And so now I can just put that right here. And you got rack group slot. You get the parameters, which is the control block. And let's put these side by side so you can see it better. And then you have the data file, N782. And then you don't need a buffer file because we're not going through M files. And length of 4. And it's not continuous. So you can see that looks very similar to what you would have both in the SLC and the PLC-5, but it's a true PLC-5 block transfer read. And now what I would do is if I had a license, I would go ahead and delete this guy out of there. But you can see here I can't delete it. I don't have a license. So with that done, I think we spent enough time looking at how the SoftPLC converter converts the program. I think we understand now the different things we've got to do, loading the SLC-500 instructions being one of the most important things, so we have that backwards compatibility. Now, if we go over to Studio 5000, let's take a look at that ACD file I exported. Again, if you had an old version of RS Logix 500, you'd have to save it as a SLC library file and use the old conversion wizard. I got this completely documented, both old and new, side by side, over at theautomationblog.com. So if you want to go through that process, you'll see it there. But in any case, this is the new process we're looking at now. So as soon as I get Studio 5000 open with that ACD, you can see here the AENTR. Again, that's active mature, but it's still available. And you can see I'm keeping all of the I/O, right? So no rewiring. I just have that on Ethernet and it's mapped in. Now, one of the problems here, I think the first thing is whenever you do one of these imports, Rockwell likes to put your code into an event-based task and then jump to it. I know a lot of us don't when we do our own, but that's the way Rockwell's importers always do it. And then here, in that to ladder that we imported, you can see the code. Now, quite a bit of this is the same, right? Because a lot of the instruction set from the SLC-500 to the control logics is the same. Of course, you don't have an S115. You're going to have to map that to, more than likely, S:/FS in logics. And then you can see the bit file there, create an array. We go down here, we see the same. And when noticing a note on the I/O, we'll look at that in a minute. What I first want to look at is the PCE error. Okay, and this PCE error is telling us, hey, there's something you need to look at here, right? And this is telling us that, the overflow and underflow in the SLC-500, well, that's a 16-bit processor. So, that's not going to be the same in a 32-bit processor, and, if you counted up 32,767, then you count it up again, you'd get an overflow because it's a 16-bit integer. It's going to go negative. But you don't have that in the control logics because it can count up to over 2 billion before it starts to overflow, right? So, and I forget the exact number, but I'm sure you guys know it's like 2.14, blah, blah, blah. But in any case, so this, you have to replace this code because this is a 32-bit processor. So you're going to have to say, maybe you'll just do like, well, I don't know. I mean, you could go in there and reset the counter or set it to a negative value and set this bit. I don't know how you would do that. But in any case, if you're not using the overflow and underflow, you don't even have to worry about it. But if you are, you can see here, they tell you, look at error message 102 in the documentation, and they'll give you a whole readout of what to do with these kind of error codes. Okay. So in any case, that's not an issue with SoftPLC because they're 16-bit based. They're a product designed to replace the SLC-500 and PLC-5. Okay, so now let's take a look at the strange I/O conversion. We get this long description saying, hey, the migration tool did not bring over your documentation like the SoftPLC conversion did. And also, look at the addressing here. It's really long because the name they gave the AENTR by default, they called it Ethernet Bridge _1746. I don't know if that's the best name. Personally, I would change that right away. You know, that I just think that's too much verbiage there for an IO address, right? I would just call it RIO and then whatever rack it's labeled as in the field. It may be rack 0, so RIO 00, or ERIO, but ENET bridge underscore blah blah. That's just too much for me. But in any case, and now you have to go and you will have to update all your comments because none of that came in here. Now, if we go back to the RSLogix 500 and let me reset the window to default, you can see all the comments that were missing here that are in the original program. Now let's come down here and we'll take a look at the double divide. Look, there's no double divide in Studio 5000. Not sure why, but in any case, you know, it's been out since 1999, I believe, 98, 99. But, you know, it is what it is. So they do have a description here in the manual. It's program conversion error 131. So you can read up on that there. And again, some of these are not big deals. Some of them are. Like, for instance, you get a conversion error when you're trying to look at, you can see 109 here, because we're looking at the accumulate value. Well, this kind of makes sense. Guess what? The PLC-5 and SLC-500 timers use a 0.01 or a 1 second timer base. But in RSLogix 5000, everything is a 0.001 or 1 millisecond time base. So the software went ahead and massaged those values, but it didn't change the values, for instance, in this case, in N72. So you need to go through and say, well, you probably meant 300 seconds here, but you have 120 in N72. Now, is it a huge deal to go through there and change them all? Not for a small program like this, but if you had, you know, a few thousand rungs, it may get tedious to go through and update those and double check them. Again, you have to double check everything with a fine-tooth comb if you expect it to run the same way. So let's come down here, and here we can see that we have a message instruction that was not converted. So what we can see here is the default instructions trying to replicate the block transfer. So it's trying to do a block transfer read type message, right? 4 elements like we saw we had in the original program and put it in N782. But it doesn't have the communication path, so you're going to have to figure that out as well. Again, this is a PCE error 150, so that's something that's not going to come over, not as straightforward as it would be if you stayed 16-bit with a platform that natively supports remote I/O. Again, this is one of the downsides of staying with your I/O if you're going to compact or ControlLogix, but this huge upsize is keeping the same I/O, like wiring, right? And the cost of I/O, right? So it depends on where you're going to spend your money. Do you want to go to 32-bit? Do you have to go to 32-bit? And so on. And next down here, you can see how they converted the Todd instruction to a compute instruction. This one, I think, is pretty okay, but again, that S42, well, there's no status file in the ControlLogix or CompactLogix, not like that, no S file, right? So you're going to have to take care of that as well. And then here is the PID instruction. You can see how that converted. Again, very similar blocks, but there are differences between them. So I think whatever platform you're going to go to, you're going to have to really talk to the folks and see what you do about converting this to make sure it works. But the variables did come in, which is good, right? You know what? The last one we're going to cover here is the SCP. You can see it's been turned into a compute that has the expression that's equal to the scale with parameters. And again, I don't understand. It's been 25 years, guys. I don't know why they're refusing to put that instruction in. But look, this is going to work. Is it easy to understand? No, right? I would have to compare the old to the new to know what each of these variables were. But at the end of the day, it works. So if you're not worried about your personnel understanding what this does, then you wouldn't have to change it. Of course, just for my sake, I prefer the SCP. In fact, I would, if this was my project, I would download that add-on and put it in here because this to me is not acceptable. But hey, it works, right? And if you want something quick and dirty, that's what you can use. And with that, I'm going to leave the comparison here. This is not supposed to be 100% comparison. I just wanted to give you an idea of, how the new SLC program file importer in SoftPLC's top-doc next-gen software compares to how you would import it into ControlLogix. And look, if you have a plant full of ControlLogix and this is your one SLC-500, the extra work is probably going to be worth it to you. But if that's not the case, then it seems pretty obvious to me that SoftPLC has done a great job making an easy-to-use utility to migrate your SLC-500 code into their product, which is based on the PLC-5. And if this is something you have to do quickly, maybe your CPU died and you can't get a replacement, or the replacement's going to cost you thousands and thousands of dollars, this is definitely an option. You can contact the people over at SoftPLC and explore this to see if it would work for you. And with that, that's how you import a SLC 500 project into both Studio 5000 and the SoftPLC development environment. And I think there's a pretty stark difference there. So look, if you have a plant full of control logics and compact logics, it may be worth all the extra work to convert the program to that platform, right? And then reuse the I/O. Honestly, I can definitely see that. On the flip side, if you have a plant full of PLC5s and SLC 500s and you lost a CPU and you can't get it replaced, or it's going to be thousands of dollars to repair, well, I can definitely see the appeal of the SoftPLC option. And of course, if you're interested in their PLCs and I/O and everything they offer, check out podcast 173, where we went over that in all kinds of detail. Now, I can't make the decision for you. Only you can make that decision. And I recommend reaching out to either Rockwell or SoftPLC if you're considering one of those options. And of course, SoftPLC, like I said earlier, did sponsor this episode, so it can be completely ad-free. So please let them know if you contact them based on this video. Please let them know I sent you, and I would really appreciate it because I appreciate them seeing the value in the work we do here and making our videos ad-free. It makes us really frees up our time to do episodes like this, which I love doing. But in any case, you'll find the SoftPLC links in the description. And I just want to thank you all for watching, for tuning back in, and for giving me your time today. I hope you found this helpful and interesting. And I want to wish you all an awesome week. I want to wish you all good health and happiness as well. And until next time, my friends, peace.